Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're doing a quick fireside chat with Kiran Thomas from Microsoft. He's product manager over at Microsoft Teams, and we have our head of engineering, Mark Widman, as well. We're going to be talking about a couple really interesting things today, notably around developer productivity in a team and enterprise setting, what's going on with Microsoft Teams, why we chose to build on Microsoft Teams, some of the exciting stuff that's happening with pieces. So yeah, we're going to start it off with some intros. Mark, if you want to go ahead and give us an intro on your side, and then Kiran, I'll introduce you after myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Tsavo. Hello, everyone. My name's Mark. I'm the head of engineering at Pieces, and I do a lot of different things, but most notably, I work on the everything backend related. So anything from API design to saving the data to any sort of cloud infrastructure, as well as working with our really awesome teams, such as our machine learning team, as well as bringing that to the front end experience with the plugins.
Awesome. And yeah, real quick on my side, I should probably do an intro. Yeah, so I'm the CEO and technical co-founder here at Pieces. And yeah, I do a lot of stuff, across the board, both on the investment side, finance side, product planning side, but also, getting nitty gritty with Mark and the team when it comes down to the shot clock, if you will. We're shipping hard, shipping fast, but one of the things we're super excited about is the work we did earlier this year and continue to do with Microsoft and notably Kiran. So Kiran, you're our guest today. We'd love for you to do a quick intro on your side, some of the stuff you do, and we'll get into the icebreakers.
Yeah, thanks, Savo. So first of all, I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation. So thank you for having me. I am Kiran Thomas, a product manager at Microsoft. I work in the Teams platform ecosystem team, and my goal is to figure out ways we can bring awesome developers like Pieces to the Teams ecosystem and make our developers' lives easier. And yeah, I've been at Microsoft for many years, and I've been a developer in my past life as well. So I know the pains of both worlds. So happy to have this conversation with you guys.
Awesome. And, Kiran, like yourself, our whole name of the game here at Pieces is building for and with developers, right? And just improving that day-to-day experience, going throughout your workflow and just building amazing things. So I know you work with a lot of developers and you have a developer background yourself. And, I think all three of us on here are going to have a great call talking about some of the things we face. So speaking of developer productivity and kind of the things that we're trying to improve, let's go ahead and kick it off with an icebreaker. Top developer problem / working with developers / building for developers that you face on a day-to-day. And Mark, if you want to go ahead and kick it off, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Tsavo. This is an interesting one. One of the big problems as a developer that I face is a very typical one, but that's context switching. So from my research flow to my development flow to my collaboration flow, trying to find the best way of keeping myself effective from one place to the next, and so on.
Very fair, very fair. Yeah, we're going to get into context switching heavy duty, but Kiran, if you want to go ahead and talk about your background, developer problems, and also too what you're trying to improve and solve developer problems for on the team side. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my signals that I get from developers are from talking to customers and developers I talk to as part of my job. And it's been a paradigm shift in a multiple different ways. If you look at the past decade, we, taking aside COVID and lockdown and how remote work just took over the world. And right after that, we have the next wave and next paradigm shift come through with AI. So I think both of these are top of mind for all the customers and developers I talk to. How do you manage a team and stay productive when you have a remote and hybrid environment being where developers have to survive in that? And then with the advent of AI, what does that mean for me as a developer, as a development team for my product? How is this going to change and how I land value and grow my software business? So with these two, there's a lot of topics we can go to, and hopefully we'll get to at least a good chunk of that today.
Absolutely. And you said a key word in there, which was surviving. And I would say, to kind of sum it up, my major problem with productivity that I have or that we have with the team is just the volume and velocity of material that goes on, right? In between individuals, in between your own workflow. And when I talk about volume, I'm talking about 50, maybe 100 open browser tabs, a bunch of repos open that you're looking at, people that you're talking to, got meetings all the time. So high volume. And then things are moving fast. Kiran, you mentioned the AI side of things. I think that AI is writing and enabling developers to write more code than ever, meaning that frameworks are upgrading faster, products are shipping faster, and experiences that are available, that bar is just going up and up. So as a developer, I think navigating that chaos, right, and surviving is just is really the name of the game, and also to the contexts, right? I think you have these atomic contexts that you're switching between, to Mark's point, that I think you want to try and organize and capture so that you can just move a little bit faster, keep up with what's going on, and just save a little more time. Yeah. All right, so basically, we want to talk about what's going on with teams and how you guys are uniquely approaching 2023 and onwards to kind of improve the developer experience, specifically in the teams and enterprise collaboration space. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we're capitalizing on that, working with you guys to build an awesome product on our side and improve the ecosystem. Yeah. So
yeah,
Kiran.
Thank you. Thanks, Tsavo. So if you're not familiar, Microsoft Teams is a chat and collaboration tool where you can have meetings with your coworkers in real time, or you can work asynchronously and have conversations via chat. And we saw an explosive growth during the COVID period, pandemic time, for obvious reasons, where everybody was, had to stay at home and work remotely. And as part of that, we had to make sure that our entire product and services scale, and that was our focus for the pandemic. And right after that, now that we're in a stable state, we're focusing on making our core product better. And we recently announced new Teams. It's a new Teams client with a completely new stack of and platform that we're using and bringing out to our customers and developers as well, which promises much better performance. And the goal there is to address one of the top things we heard from developers, which is to make Teams snappy and performant, right? So that's the first thing that we're working to make Teams better for developers. The other piece of it is we all work with a bunch of different tools, and so to avoid context switching, we want to make it as seamless as possible when you're trying to have a conversation about any piece of content or any service or piece of data. So which means if you're in another tool, how do you bring that into Teams and have a conversation with anyone, whether in a meeting or chat? So that's where our integrations and our platform come into play, where, for example, like with Pieces, any of the pieces information that you want to have a conversation about, that's where the platform play comes in. And then last but definitely not the least is how we're trying to help developers by bringing an AI assistant within all of our Microsoft products, but within the context of Teams, it's really bringing the context of your conversations and what you're doing outside of Teams together so that we can make your lives easier. So that's I think the three main areas that we're focusing on to try and make our developers' lives easier.
I love that. So faster Teams, smarter AI, and just data centralized and available. That sounds, yeah, there's some big pillars. I know you guys are working hard on that, and we've been working with you guys as you kind of hit on some of those major topics, and we're excited about the capabilities that Teams is going to be offering. And so Mark, I'd love for you to talk about how we got into building on Microsoft Teams, some of the features that we wanted to hit on that are complementary to the efforts Microsoft is doing, and yeah, how's the journey been so far? So Mark, if you want to get into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So first I'll tap into why we got started with Microsoft Teams first. And that was because, it's one of the largest communication platforms out there, and takes some of our first initial kind of like single player mode of Pieces and enables it to be collaborative amongst many developers, as well as solves a really awesome problem that I touched up on, and that's keeping you in flow. So for instance, as a developer, if I'm communicating with Tsavo and I'm asking Tsavo to send me some of his code for like maybe an AOT. He can send that over to me immediately. I don't need to switch over to my browser, but I can just save that. I can enrich it. So then when I'm ready to actually write code, it's there for me. I don't need to save it in a file and then have to go try to find where it is and so on, but immediately and readily available.
Or forbid you ask me twice, right? I'm like, I
Oh
already
man.
sent you that, you should have saved it, right? Like, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, we built a plugin and an actual application on top of Microsoft Teams called Pieces, Pieces for developers. And some of the early features, I'll just touch on a couple of them. So save, we already talked about. So you can save any sort of message. You can save images. You can save all that really good stuff from Teams to your local Pieces drive, as well as you can interact with a co-pilot locally within, or not locally, but within a personal chat via a question, as well as if Tsavo were to send me a screenshot, I can do a quick @pieces extract, and I can immediately extract that code from the image and then enrich it with a ton of pieces metadata that we extract on the back end.
Absolutely. And I'll kind of build on some of that to talk about, where these things are coming from and the focus that we put on when building pieces for developers. And that's just really small pieces, pun intended, of your workflow, right? So, that work in progress journey, you're looking at sample code, you're looking at open source packages, you're on Stack Overflow, you're talking to, a co-pilot in Teams, and you're generating a lot of code that's kind of out of context. But it is out of context in, the idea that it's not in a large body of code, but it's in context in the idea that you're sharing it with a person and you're having a conversation and there's a need for that. And so, that sharing experience, we really want to capitalize on. So the thing that I love the most about, saving from Microsoft Teams is you just, @pieces save, and then basically it gets saved to my local repository. But often I want to, a couple days later, maybe a week later, maybe a month later, I want to get back to that part in the conversation to understand how we even got here, right? Where did that even come from? And so when you save from Teams to Pieces, it associates all the related people in that conversational scope. And it also has a really nice related link back to that original message. So you search for it in Pieces, boom, click that link. Now you're revisiting the conversation. So I think that's really, really awesome, is associating, the context and the metadata with the things that are getting exchanged, and having that really important. And then the screenshot side of things, two last things to add, but the screenshot side of things is developers send screenshots because plain text kind of sucks, and they're like, hey, I want a screenshot because it's syntax highlighted, I can receive that, I can look at it, it's no problem. So you actually see developers posting on Twitter, posting on Teams, whatever, screenshots more than you see plain text. But this is problematic because the recipient's like, hey, really, like, I need to type that thing out, how am I going to get it? So yeah, Mark, as you mentioned, @pieces extract goes ahead and pulls that code out of the screenshot, resends it as a copyable message. And then the enrichment part I wanted to talk about, Microsoft Teams and any type of collaborative environment is kind of like a river, a really fast moving river. And so I always say, like, your code snippet or your screenshot or whatever you're sharing is going to be lost by the end of the day. Call it a week, 2 weeks, absolutely gone. So that enrichment process, when you share a snippet or a screenshot and you say @pieces enrich, it gives it tags, titles, and stuff like that. So in search or search within Teams, can just now look at those keywords, look at the enriched metadata, in addition to trying to match on the code itself. So, I think making things more searchable on different vectors, making things more accessible, code from screenshot, whatever, that's been the name of the game for us. It's simple materials, but you interact with it a ton. So just wanted to kind of add to that.
One thing,
yeah,
if I may add, like one thing we hear from customers and developers in customer organizations is around how hard it is to manage code-related conversations within Teams, because as you can imagine, especially when you're trying to work asynchronously without having to jump on a meeting for every small thing, you're sharing code through Teams, and that was one of our top requests, is to improve that experience. And I think that's where, along with some of the stuff that we announced as part of our core product improvements, like code copy pasting, formatting, those kind of improvements, Pieces brings that whole level of like intelligence over these kind of scenarios where you're sharing code, and makes it much more easier to go back to it and continue having conversations. And Mark, like you were saying earlier, stay in the flow so that you don't have to pull your hair out trying to remember who I had this conversation with before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mark,
and
you're gonna add
right
something?
online with that, Savo touched on it a little bit, but just a really like simple thing of saving that link back to where you saved it from Microsoft Teams opens up a world of possibilities. You know, like, okay, so I remembered this code snippet, to my Pieces drive, but we made some edits to it. We had a whole nother conversation around a different topic. So I can click that link back and then re-reference that conversation, just like Kiran's also talking about, to keep me in flow, keep me informed on a lot of the different topics we were discussing.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, but like I said, keeping up with the pace, as teams get more intricate and you're working with designers and front end and back end, and the varieties there is just going up. And as things move faster because you're just iterating faster, et cetera, that context and capturing that moment, being able to revisit it is super, key for us. And I know, Kiran, you're focused on that, and we're focused on that. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We've got a couple more things coming up. But I wanted to touch on why we decided, to kind of break into the Teams and Enterprise space by our debut Microsoft Teams plugin. So Mark, if you wanted to go ahead and mention, the type of developer that we're looking to kind of include workflows for, that'd be awesome. And Kiran, if you could speak towards, how Teams is really kind of globally adopted in the developer community within Teams and Enterprise, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the types of developers that we're looking that we're are targeting for are, those developers who are collaborating with people from day to day, as well as, even just working on that single player mode as well. So for instance, Savo mentioned that the code, like the code screenshot. So let's say Savo sends me a screenshot. I can go ahead and I can save that, and I can auto enrich it and so on. But that also enables me to be able to further help people within my own organization. So for instance, when I go ahead and save that, I can reference all of the people that were saved, and then we can attach those people to that specific message, enabling you to better like find it, as well as know who you can talk to that snippet about if there's any sort of problems you face along the way. Um, so for instance, let's say I'm working on a specific problem around this code snippet. I was like, oh, who was I talking to this about, or so on. I find the code snippet, and then boom, I have those people that were in the same conversation. I can automatically reach out to that Savo. I can automatically reach out to that Mac or so on to help me solve that problem, and yeah, continue on with my day.
So to sum that up a little bit, it's basically because you're saving all these things to Pieces and you have those related people there. Now in Pieces, you could go to Global Search or go to your Copilot and ask who to reach out to about this particular topic or this particular saved material. So it's not only like an actual conversation, but it's also good at projecting in the future new conversations that you might want to have. But I would say super quick, and then Kiran, I want to get your thoughts. The main thing for us was these problems compound, right? So you go from an individual developer workflow, it's already chaos for them. You go to a size of 10, 20, now it's even more chaos, and it's just exponential chaos all the way up to Teams and Enterprise. And the best shot that you have at kind of, centralizing and containing that chaos is Microsoft Teams, right? It's where everyone comes together, everyone, iterates and works. So Kiran, I'd love to get your thoughts on, again, how a company like us, is going from the indie developer and small teams, and really you guys help kind of pave the way for breaking into enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in our Microsoft last earnings announcement, I think we announced that Teams had like 300 million monthly active users. So you can imagine that a lot of the world's major organizations and enterprises are trusting in Teams to operate their core business. to keep their teams connected to each other and make sure that their business runs smoothly, right? And there, within this set are thousands of developers trying to do their job within the constraints that they have to do within the enterprises, whether it's because of security, compliance, and all of that, right? So how do you make that their lives easier? I think that's one of the pieces where Pieces comes in, because when you're within an enterprise, you have your enterprise context that you need to always be aware of. There's not something that you can go on the internet and search for and learn that. So you need to start to build your own internal knowledge base. And that's where, when you bring Pieces and teams together, that context of conversations within teams that developers are having can be saved within Pieces, and it kind of builds on itself. And over time, the more you use it, the more value you get out of it, right? So it's, I think, going to be a blessing for enterprise developers once they discover Pieces and start using it.
That's awesome. That's high praise. Thank you, Kiran. We're working hard. All right. Well, we got a couple more things here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. But I want to talk about building on teams at large. So, Kiran, you guys have a lot going on to make Teams a better platform. So I know there's new APIs coming out. You guys are making an effort to make Teams available everywhere in an isomorphic sense. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And then Mark, I'd love to get your experience building on Teams, some of the things and the nuances that, we had to go through in the decision-making process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was that you, Mark, first, or
Kiran first? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I think if you're a developer or an enterprise, you have to think about where on the journey of operating a successful software development team with all your other stakeholders, where you stand on there. So we've talked to customers across the spectrum, whether you're in a manufacturing industry, you might be in healthcare, you might be in like a SaaS company, right? So you have to work your way through that journey and push your entire team and culture to be moving forward on that spectrum. And the first thing to do is to make sure that you have your team's environment set up, the basics like channels and your processes and tags and things like that. After that, you move to the next stage where you want to look at what kind of tools that you use and make sure those integrations are working well within Teams. And lastly, you want to make sure that your asynchronous and synchronous modes of working both work well for your developers. And then future looking, the next phase is obviously going to be AI. Like, how is artificial intelligence can assist your developers in doing their jobs better and faster?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, and I would say, part of that and part of your guys' team's mission is to make it easier for a company to integrate a tool, set up those processes, standardize, the all things considered there, and yeah, we went through that, right? So, Mark, if you want to talk about how we built our Teams app, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So from day one, just like any developer, pulled up the docs and got started with a Node.js TypeScript project, which was really awesome. So getting started with Microsoft Teams, they had a really awesome Microsoft Teams toolkit extension for VS Code, which made it super easy to just get all the fundamentals down, get your local environment set up. Then when we were ready to provision all of your cloud resources, it was a one-click, enter your name, and boom, you've got it all readily available for you. And you can set up your development, your staging, and your production environments, and one click of a button, as well as updating all those and make it very, very easy. Yeah, and one of the most powerful things that I found was actually interacting with the Graph API that Microsoft has to offer. It was so fast. The endpoints and the APIs available are very easy to use, and they're intuitive. And there's so many powerful experiences that you can build on top of those. The world is your oyster there. Yeah. So that stuff is fantastic. So it took us the road to MVP about 6 weeks. The first the MVP came together very quickly, in like two to 4 weeks or so. And then there is a submission process included in it, so make sure you bake in a little bit of time for that. And the submission team is really awesome. they want to ensure that and ensure Kiran, I'll have you touch on this a little bit more.
Sure.
So forgive me, but yeah, so the app submission team is really awesome. They're there to, from my perspective, ensure that every single application that touches the Microsoft Teams store is up to their bar, which is fantastic. So any feature that you have available from your side is thoroughly tested, works across all devices, and so on, as well as like any sort of like marketplace, any sort of help included with that, any sort of commands that need to be done from message extension to message extension to message extension are all uniform and good. So yeah, overall the development experience was quite awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add one thing there is, Microsoft Teams, the process, for us, we wanted to be in high company, right? And so, I think that it was nice to see that it's not just willy-nilly and you're going to be discovering a bunch of junk on the Teams App Store and stuff like that. But like, we went through a very robust process, a lot of testing, a lot of, process like that. And that means that, hey, look, we've hit that benchmark, like you're saying, Mark, and we're in high quality company, right? And so I would commend Kiran, you guys, and everyone who's on the program, making that curation process A+. It's nice because it means we're going to get a good rep, once we're through it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I just wanted to point out how like Mark touched on the different integration points that we're trying to make available for developers like you, so that you can integrate with Teams in the best way that meets the needs of our common users. So you touched upon like being able to notify or reach users when they're in Teams. So that's one piece of bunch of APIs you can use there. You can use tabs or things like that to bring in content from outside and just host a web page there. Then you talked about how there's the bot piece, which is conversational. You can even integrate with meetings if you'd like. That's another piece of it. So the goal for our platform is to open up Teams for developers like you to bring your services and content in, and also whatever is relevant from a user's context of conversations in Teams, take that out into your platform.
One of the things that actually probably took us from a couple weeks to 6 weeks total MVP time was, we're a native app, right? We ship on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, and so we also had to look at the cloud infrastructure to make sure, hey, look, you're piping from a cloud environment to a native environment, and that's going properly. So I would imagine, if you want to get out there and build things on Teams, it's pretty quick, especially if you're like a web app or something like that. But yeah. So a couple other things. If there's nothing else to comment on that, we'll wrap it up on that topic. But yeah, Mark, Kiran, anything else on that?
Oh, okay. I think we got it.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, basically want to talk about what's on deck for us. We're going to be wrapping it up here, looking forward, and I think this is the meat of the conversation that we've all been tiptoeing around. But Kiran, I'd love for you to kind of kick it off on, what's on deck, either from an API perspective or from a capabilities perspective, and what do you really see companies building experience-wise that's going to be forward-looking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most exciting recent announcement that we've made that developers would probably care about are around how we're bringing AI assistants into Teams. So there's two ways that we're thinking about it and going to manifest that in Teams. One is through the Microsoft Teams Copilot. So you can ask Copilot just like you would in GPT, natural language questions about any of your context of Microsoft within Teams or any other Microsoft product. So bring me documents, who emailed me the other day, stuff like that. That's coming. That's super exciting. And imagine as a developer being able to not have to reach out to people unnecessarily and ask these questions, get these answers of your organizational context. And the second piece of it is with our Teams AI SDK library, where any developer who builds on the Teams platform can bring their own chat AI, LLM powered AI, and manifest that within Teams. So the way that'll work is you can say you have your bot available. You can mention that bot, ask those questions, get the same kind of answers that you would from your own ChatGPT version or plugin directly within Teams. So these are the two most exciting things I think that's coming up.
And it's not like we planned this or anything, but that tees up Mark for some of the stuff we're pretty excited for. Speaking of co-pilots and AI. So Mark, yeah, what are you excited about?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Kiran. So yeah, moving forward, I'm super excited for just continuing to iterate on our Copilot within Microsoft Teams. Currently, right now, it's in a basic sense, but moving forward, bringing all of the really awesome retrieval augmented generation to our Copilot, so that you can go ahead and ground your Copilot to your specific task and so on, to provide better and better responses that are, more relevant to what you're currently working on and so on.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and add to that, to kind of visualize a little bit more. But there's this interesting, relationship between saving things and generating things. And Kiran touched on this at the beginning of our talk, but the more you save, the better it gets, because you have that context, you have those examples that are then used to ground that large language model. So it's giving you responses that are specific and unique to what you've been doing and so on. For us, I think that I'm mostly excited about how sharing is going to transform with AI. There's two major issues with sharing that exist today. Number one is figuring out who to ask for something, right? Especially in a big org, if you have a lot of people, you don't know who was working on what and when, and so therefore you don't know who to ask for what and why, right? And so I think that because you're saving from pieces or from teams into pieces, and you're associating the people, and you're building these kind of networks between material and individuals, and of course, it's got the timeline, the chronological metadata. You can ask pieces, hey, who should I talk to about this? Then experience number two is, all right, using the Teams API, I can launch a meeting, I can hop on a call, I can send that person a chat, and now I'm right back in Teams. And then number three is, if you're in a group chat with, say, me, Mark, and Sam, you can say, hey, I don't have to ask Sam directly or ask Mark directly. Maybe it's at Pieces question. Do Sam or Mark have XYZ, right? Maybe some dark code, or maybe a promise resolver or something like that. And the Copilot is going to be able to go and retrieve from your Pieces drive and everything that's shared there, publicly available, Sam's Pieces drive, and mine. And basically, it'll kind of identify very similar things that are already saved, and then it can either return those exactly, almost like a search, or generate something based on those examples and your input question. So I think that retrieval augmented generation is really, really exciting for how our Copilot is going to kind of evolve. And yeah, I think you'll need a place to save things, and need a place to pull them from to ground the models. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's mind blown right there, to just see how when we talk about the magic of AI, like making stuff like that come to life is really what we're talking about. So super excited for this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really world class, and Microsoft, y'all are an absolute thought leader in the space, and we're loving our partnership and looking forward to what's coming. But yeah, I mean, that's really, really all we have here. I think we touched on a lot of things, and the audience is like, hey, coming up on 30 minutes here, might drop off soon. But yeah, Kiran or Mark, any last comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the partnership, super happy to have a partner like Pieces work together so closely with Microsoft, where especially when we have new ideas and we're working on new things, we can run it by you. It's always great to have a stalwart of developers to talk to. Since you build tools for developers, you know them really well. We really appreciate the partnership for that reason, and looking forward for all the goodness that's coming in the near future.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, anything else to add?
Yeah, thanks again, Kiran. And if you try the Microsoft Teams plugin, we are building for and with developers. So if you have any comments or questions or whatever, any sort of feedback is greatly valued.
Awesome. All right, well, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Tsavo. We had Kiran, the guest, on today. That was awesome. And Mark, absolutely great conversation here. Hopefully people enjoy it. It's a good listen.